Now we've got the host of On with Kara Swisher and the co-host of Pivot, Kara Swisher. Thanks so much for taking the time.
No problem. So much news, Brian.
So much news. Okay, well, let's start off first with Elon Musk. He aligns himself with Trump, who, of course, these EV-loving liberals hate. Tesla's stock price is falling. Car sales are falling, both in the U.S. and internationally. So I have two questions here. Can Tesla survive this? And is there a world in which Republicans flock to EVs to compensate for the liberals who have left?
No, they are not. His audience is a particular group of people who believe in climate change, as did Elon Musk many, many years ago. He was quite adamant on it and quite dramatic. And so I think what he's done is the biggest destruction of, well, there's a couple things, because I think it's easy to blame it on nobody likes him, which his negatives are quite high, especially with his customers. When you do things that your customers don't like, it's, the customer is always right, no matter what it is. And I don't think that the MAGA groups are not rushing to EVs. They find they're hostile to them, right? And so was Trump until just the other day when he had the car sale on the lawn of the White House. But he was hostile to electric vehicles. And so this is not a group of people that wants to buy these things. They don't even want to buy the Cybertruck, which is sort of in their genre, right? They've only sold 45,000 trucks. They were supposed to sell 250,000. They have not. And they've had to recall them all because they were badly glued. And I think the real problem with Tesla is it's a meme stock. And the reason it's as high as it is, which is 134, a PE ratio of 134, which is insane because most car companies are in the single digits, right? PE ratios. Yeah. And so it's a meme stock that's betting on Elon Musk. And one of the things that they're betting on is that he's going to do robo-taxis. Well, the problem is Waymo's been doing them for several years in San Francisco and other cities. So he doesn't have one robo-taxi on the road, while others are innovating. The second thing is that the cars have not been updated. What you live or die in the car business and the technology business by your latest version. And as good a car, and let me say Teslas are good cars, it's not as good as other new cars that are coming. And so there's all these new competitors now, including in China with BYD. Here, there's plenty of different competitors. They're all growing market share, and Tesla's losing it, which is a natural thing for it to happen because it was the only choice. But when you get a choice as a consumer, you want to go with the sexy BMW or the really cool Ford. The Ford has several, the Mach, I think it's the Mach 5, beautiful electric car. And so if you have this Tesla that looks the same year after year and you don't like the guy, you're like, I think I'll get the cool one with the people I kind of like, or I don't care, they don't sit around and insult all manner of people that I happen to like. So that's the other thing. And so the other thing that's then promising is that it's an AI company, that it's a robotics company. And Elon's always promising the next thing. And maybe one of them will be right. And he's saying that the robotics company is what it's going to be. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. He can say what he damn well pleases. And I like that he's like shooting for the moon, but the products aren't there to make up for the market share of this company going down. And then on top of it, he's dislikable. And so you don't want to buy his stuff. That's all.
Well, look, I think all of this was so easy to preview. I mean, I spoke with Mark Cuban in the lead up to the election about how Elon Musk was so clearly aligning himself with Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And so how like for him, unless he really does plan on just pivoting away from direct to consumer sales and going full blown AI or robo taxis or B2B, whatever it may be, like how could he not have foreseen what aligning yourself with Donald Trump would do to his brand?
Because he's benefiting from other things. Like, look, these new auto tariffs benefit Tesla.
Right.
Just so it's the only company that gets benefited. Nobody else does, just Tesla. And so, he's got more space contracts for Starlink. The government is the biggest buyer of things. And so what does he need the rest of us lousy people when he's got Trump to give him contracts? So, the government, that's where all tech is moving toward, because why do you rob banks? That's where the money is. Why do you suck up to government? Because that's where the money is. And so even as he talks about cutting, he's benefiting enormously. And also by getting rid of the people that were investigating some of his problems at each of these companies. And so he's gotten rid of the regulators, which he always wanted to do. And he's getting sweet, fat contracts. And that's what's sad here is because real progress in technology depends on innovation. Instead, it now depends on access. It doesn't depend on how good your product is now. It depends on how close you are to this, to this very corrupt president. And so that's not innovation. That's not what got Elon to where he is today. And so the problem he has is, as good an entrepreneur he is, a lot of it is he's kind of a P.T. Barnum character in many. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like when he did that stupid thing where he's like, we're going to do robotaxis. I'm like, I'm in a robotaxi right now. You're not the pioneer of like I'm riding around Sanford. Yesterday I took 3 or 4 Waymos all over Sanford. They're everywhere, and they've got millions of miles they've tested, and so why would, and also I don't trust the safety of the Tesla as much because they use fewer points of safety. So I'm not going to use a Tesla, but I also didn't use the GM thing because I didn't think the technology was up to it. It wasn't a political thing. It was, if I'm in a driverless car, I'm going to be a safe driverless car or the safest I can. Yeah. And so it's, it's hard. And then when you're at over 100, what I just said, PE ratio, the General Motors, which has much bigger business than Tesla does, is at 7.41 PE ratio. Think about that. Yeah. It's a meme stock based on Elon. And so, but, he's very good at that. Like with Twitter, the business is less good. And now the valuation is up because you're buying Elon Musk Inc. You're not buying this shitty social media site where advertising doesn't work. You're just doing it so you're paying the VIG. And that's not capitalism as far as I can see.
Well, look, I want to zoom out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Republicans have been really effective more broadly over the decades at finding villains. George Soros has been one, again, for decades. Sure. Is Musk not just the same exact thing, if not worse, on the right as the very thing that Republicans have clutched their pearls about on the left for decades?
Well, hello, they went on and on about safety of communications, and they just did the worst thing ever. And and they're like on Hillary Clinton. These people don't have, the hypocrisy is so thick. It's kind of ridiculous. And there's lots. We'll talk about that in a second. But yes, he's explicitly. Brian, keep this in mind. Every accusation is a confession with these people. Whatever they say, I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing. Right. So if they accuse someone of something, it's because that's what they're doing. Elon is exactly what they claim to have hated with George Soros. But he's explicit and right in front of you buying elections. That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing in Wisconsin right now. That's what he's doing everywhere.
He's straight up paying people to sign a petition in Wisconsin, which is basically just him saying he's buying votes, which is, the same scheme that he pulled in Pennsylvania.
And it worked. Let me just tell you, it worked. By the way, well, thank you, Citizens United. It's legal to do this, what he's doing. Now, maybe they'll stop him for all kinds of reasons, but Elon Musk, one of the great attributes of him, he blows through stop signs. That's his greatest skill, is blowing through stop signs. And so that's what he's going to do until you stop him. And of course, nobody now is going to stop him because Trump needs him for a variety of reasons, for not just the money, because there's plenty of rich people, but he's willing to take the heat for Trump in a way that's really significant. Elon's negatives are way down. Trump's are just slightly down, right? But Trump is Elon, and Elon is Trump, but Elon's taking away, he's a heat shield, in rocket terms is what he's doing.
But do you think that sticks? Do you think that let's say there comes a point where Elon does lose his political, his political usefulness for Trump, and Trump finally cuts bait. Do you think that then Trump basically gets to start fresh, and all of the negatives just rest on Elon? He's gone, so that Trump just gets to start over fresh?
No, because Elon's approval rating is falling through the floor. Like, I've never seen such a brand destruction as this. Yeah. This is really quite something. I don't know. I think he thinks, Elon's a massive distraction and at the same time is doing significantly troubling things, right? But even North Carolinians don't like the major federal agency cuts. They don't like any of this. And so Musk is a very polarizing figure. And even though Republicans view him favorably, I suspect more and more, as you're seeing all over the place, we don't like this guy. What is he doing here? And it's not to say other presidents haven't had rich people secretly around them, but nothing like this. Not someone whose finger is in the pie so explicitly. Right. And I think people like their corruption quiet, I guess. I don't know what to say or something. But this guy is explicitly tit for tat. Let's get rid of the agencies that are investigating me in any way. And by the way, look, I get it. Some of the investigations are over the top, as many bureaucrats can be. At the same time, maybe they're not. Right. The other thing is everyone's for reforming government and making it work better for citizens, but not everyone's for doing it with the subtlety of a chainsaw. Right. They don't want that. They want someone to pick and choose what's good and what's bad and to figure it out. And I don't think, this DOGE thing isn't very popular. And that's that. And so I think he'll dump it when that becomes clear. If he loses the midterm elections, and he's not finding that much. What he's proving, by the way, is the government's kind of efficient. Like he's not finding much, right? He's really not
the
finding
fact that they
good.
have to lie about these cuts and say that they've cut $8 billion where there's only $8 million. When you have to start lying about cuts that, Joe Biden already made during his administration, and then you're taking credit for them during Trump's administration, that's kind of a testament to the fact that, to your exact point, government is running pretty efficiently right now. But more broadly, it's an interesting tack, because while I get that it might sound nice to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, the reality is that loss aversion is a pretty powerful tool in politics. And so eventually you're going to start chopping away at constituencies that you need, that are effective. Like everybody might start off on board when you just offer up this nebulous idea of cutting waste, fraud, and abuse.
Right.
But when that starts to look like, okay, now we've cut off, with USAID, clean water, clean food, HIV prevention, when it means that you have to start chopping away at Medicaid, at food stamps, at FEMA. Right.
It's the leopard ate my face. Oh, I didn't think the leopard was going to eat my face.
Right.
But what's interesting about the polling is it depends on what you ask. If you say to people, should we do efficiency? There was one, everyone says yes, 70, 80% of people, yes. Should we? They didn't specifically ask about DOGE. When you start to ask specifically about DOGE, they're like, no, we don't like this. We don't like how he's doing it. There's a big difference between this, and that's the right is very smart about this. They get a little piece of something. Immigration is problematic in many states and worrisome. That's true. It's true. Democrats should not have ignored that. Like, people were saying it to them. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about the price of eggs. We're worried about this. And to ignore it is stupid. But the response to it, that you think voters aren't smart, and they are. And so when you ask them whether you like these, whether you disapprove, all of them say, he has too much authority. He's unfettered. He's rich. He's a rich guy. He's obnoxious. They're doing too much. They've gone too far. And so, and more those polls, there's a Washington Post Ipsos poll. There's all, disapproval all over the place, concern all over the place. And you should be concerned as a citizen, because you want your government to be efficient, but you don't want it to be and so, and then his other antics, whatever he's doing, being anti-trans and everything else, it's distasteful and cruel when he calls people the R word and stuff like that. I'm not even going to use it because it's so stupid. Yeah. And there's Republicans kind of like it because they like Trump for his in-your-face stuff. But when it starts to affect them, they don't like it so much. Yeah. Right.
It's an interesting point that Democrats ignored all of these blinking red lights at their own peril. Republicans are guilty of doing the exact same thing right now.
Of course.
But as far as the broader ecosystem of tech oligarchs is concerned, you've got the Elon Musks, you've got the Mark Zuckerbergs, who have predicated their support for Trump on this idea that they want free speech, that they're these free speech champions.
No, they want money.
This administration is now deporting legal residents over op-eds that they've written. And so, is there any pressure on these purported free speech champions to square that?
That's not why they did it, Brian. They're lying to you. That's not what they wanted, because they wanted contracts with the government. Right. I'm sorry. This is the reason they were standing there like a bunch of toys on a shelf of a spoiled rich person, even richer than he is because they want something. They want government contracts. They want to be left alone. That's why they're paying the $1 million VIGs. Those are VIGs. Like, that's how it works, kids. Those are VIGs that they're paying so they don't get bothered, that they can get off. Now, look at what happened with Disney. Disney paid a VIG, right? Didn't they give money to the inauguration? And then now they're invested because their shareholders, who are the owners of the company, want to keep DEI initiatives in place. They're getting investigated. That I was like, I wrote one of the Disney's. I was like, there, no good deed. No good fucking deed. And I, at the time, said, you could pay as much as you want. They're going to come get you when they want.
I mean, we're seeing that with these law firms right now. I mean, yes, Paul Weiss offered up $40 million in pro bono legal services, and Trump right off the bat says, okay, well, actually, that's just our starting offer, and now we're going to chip away at that too.
Correct.
I mean, you saw it with the Public Integrity Unit. I mean, they had somebody basically jump on the grenade and sign off on the dismissal of Eric Adams, thinking that doing so would protect the rest of the Public Integrity Unit, and then it got disbanded anyway.
Yes, of course. Listen, I pay attention. Everything they do is a distraction to something. Look, the real thing they want are the tax cuts for the rich. That's it. That's what they want. They wanted it before. When I wrote in 2016, when they all went to Trump Tower, when I broke that story where all the tech people were there, they wanted the money repatriated to them, the profits without taxing. They want their money. They want their money here. They want their tax cuts. They don't want the tariffs. They're like, wait a minute, like that's not what we wanted. We want everything's about the tax cuts for the wealthy. That's what they want. And so they will put up with all manner of nonsense, including what's really interesting. Like, listen, Brian, liberals can be very irritating with the words and everything else. Absolutely. There's no question there. But let me just say, they don't actually ban books. They don't actually eliminate words. Everything, every accusation of the right is a confession of what they'll do, which is cut words in the budget, but just haphazardly cut words. Like that's how Jackie Robinson came off. That's how the Iwo Jima thing happened with the code talkers. They actually do the things they accuse others of doing. Despite, the liberals being too censorious, they actually ban. They actually do the things. And so it's all a feint for the tax cuts. Just keep that in mind. That's what they want from this guy. And the minute they get it, that'll be that. That'll be that. Once they get what they want, we'll see what happens after that.
If you sat down with Elon Musk right now, I presume you would get all of one question out before he would, get up.
He wouldn't sit down
and leave the interview. But if you got one question out, what would that first question be?
Oh, that's a good question. What happened to you? Like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Like this, I was just talking to a bunch of people who knew him before. I'm here in San Francisco right now. And this is a surprise to many of us. And I don't say he was a nice person before. None of these people are nice, Brian. They aren't. But some of them are. Reid Hoffman's a lovely person. Always has been, always will be a lovely person. Tim Cook's a very nice guy. Always had. Satya Nadella's a nice guy. Like, despite all the other things, there's certain people are often that like they were. The transformation of this guy, and believe me, he wasn't a lovely guy, but he wasn't this guy. Like, it's really something really profound. Always had problems, always had issues, always had oddnesses and stuff like that. But this is a real transformation of someone moving down towards Howard Hughes land, right? That's where he's going, and that's where this is going. And so someone in desperate need of help, and not that I want to give him help, but yeah.
His response to all of that would be, well, I'm the same as I've always been. The Democratic Party didn't, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
Whatever.
I mean, this is the refrain, right?
Because they investigated him. That it was again. He was investigated in ways he thought was unfair. He felt like a victim because because the richest people in the world, as you know, Brian, are the victims.
Correct.
I don't know if you know that.
No, I do. Yeah,
And so he didn't like that. And so what happens is these people don't get their way, and the minute they don't, it's like there's a Twilight Zone episode where that Billy or whatever, everyone watches around him because if he looks at you, he'll disappear you. If he gets mad at you, they're like those people. If they don't get their way, they suddenly or disagree with them because they're so used to being licked up and down all day. They don't understand discomfort with you or saying I don't agree with that. I'm not sure this is the right thing. They lose their fucking mind because they're used to being told, being violently agreed with all night long.
You said something to me in our last interview a few months back that has always stuck with me because I thought the imagery was so appropriate. It was so like spot on. And that was that in terms of why Elon has switched sides and why he's like moving over to the right is because he wants to be pet and those people are willing to pet him. And that's really at the end of the day what he's looking for. Yeah,
he does. I mean, my image of him that was really sad was the Mar-a-Lago New Year's Eve thing.
Yeah.
So he's there in sort of an ill-fitting tuxedo. It wasn't even a good tuxedo. It was like, oh, can't you afford a nice tuxedo? Like you could probably have someone sew it on you. You're so rich, right? Like little tiny children do it, maybe. And he was there by himself. I think his mother might have been with him, whatever. At Mar-a-Lago, you're the richest man in the world, and you're so lonely. This is where you are, right? I almost feel, in many ways, look, I hate to pay a compliment to Trump, but he seems to have a family that likes him, kind of. It looks like it, right? He seems to, his granddaughter does. I don't think that's fake. And I think he has had children, and obviously Elon has children, but only, only that one child he carries around like a doll was there, and I think it's really a strange.
Yeah.
And he's not
No,
supposed to, by the way, show this kid in public. Just so you're aware, they have an agreement where they're not supposed to show this kid in public, and he doesn't anyway. But he's not there with all of his children. His children don't like him, right? Especially Vivian, who just did a wonderful interview in Teen Vogue. I thought, oh my God, you're the richest man in the world, and here you are. That's how lonely you are. No friends, no your new friends who are there because you're rich. It was very sad to me. Pathetic
it's true.
is another word.
He has unilaterally disabused me of the notion that all of the money in the world will somehow make you happy.
No.
Let's finish off with this. We've talked a lot about how the Republican Party today, and we alluded to this before with Signalgate. We're in a post-shame, post-hypocrisy world. And so after the last literal decade of Republicans clutching their pearls over Hillary Clinton being careless with national security information.
She must be having a great week. Go ahead.
Does the fact that this has happened now, does it stick for a Republican Party for whom shame and hypocrisy don't exist?
No, well, because look at there's a couple of things at work here, just from the technology point of view. They're incompetent. Like the fact that Mike Walls made it 4 weeks disappearing, I was like, 4 weeks? It's usually a day. Like I was just sort of watching, and of course, then he has his Venmo thing public. So you're like, are you completely stupid, Dad? Like I was like,
well, and also, Der Spiegel did a full expose on how Gabbard, Hegseth, and Waltz all had some of their public information, their passwords, usernames, email addresses available online, which were then linked to programs like, for example, Signal.
Yes, exactly. And so it's a real problem. I mean, it's really fascinating in that regard. But that said, so it's incompetent because they didn't know they had brought this guy in. I suspect they were trying to bring someone else in and they mistake. That's happened to me with tech people. I've gotten in threads on Meta, but with the Meta senior staff, I'm in an email thing suddenly because someone with my name or a similar name was supposed to be there. It's happened a half a dozen times for me. I've seen it. It happens personally for everybody. That said, one, they're incompetent. Two, they're careless and sloppy, right? These are important things. They're obviously on their personal cell phones because or they've sideloaded stuff onto a government phone. My ex-wife was a government official. She was a CTO of America. She had a phone she hated. It was a BlackBerry, I believe, because it was the most secure at the time. And she had to use it. She couldn't use her personal phone for anything. And you couldn't sideload things. You couldn't add things. So they were, one, were they or not on their personal phones? Two, what network were they on? Because all these networks are porous. Where were they doing this thing?
We know Steve Witkoff was in Russia when this group chat
was he in a skiff? Obviously not. And that's even very hard to do. It's hard to do when you're trying to protect it. And to do this was incredibly sloppy. The other thing is all the word games they're playing, the hypocrisy around what a war plan is versus they clearly was information that shouldn't be on a commercial app, period. Like it doesn't even matter. Like it was a war plan, but they'll twist that in any way they want to do. The thing they were doing, again, we're all looking at the incompetence. They were trying to get out of accountability of what they were putting. They are using Signal because it disappears eventually, because they wanted to hide what they were doing, because government officials are supposed to show you their homework all the time, and then it goes in the National Archives. So hundreds of years from now, historians can look at what they did, right? And so if there's a problem, we can look at what they did. They were trying to hide their actions secretly. And honestly, they should just meet together and talk to each other and do that if they want to do that. But instead, because they're such lazy morons, they did it on this. And what they were ultimately what they were trying to do is hide their homework from people because they didn't want you to see what they actually were doing. And that's, to me, a disservice to the American people who pay their salaries so that we can see their homework and what they're doing. So that's what they were doing. They were up to tricks. But they're just stupid. They're just incompetent. So.
As always, great talking to you. For anybody who's watching right now, check out On with Kara Swisher and also Pivot. Kara Swisher, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Brian.